report on this computer. Okay, so what we're going to do is we'll just go ahead and begin here with the foundations of credit. And again, just feel free to jump in. What we're going to talk about today is really what is credit? How does it work? What are lenders looking to see? So what are they looking in your credit profile? What are the things they want to see in there? And then I've got a few credit reports to show as well. And some of the credit reports, as you're looking at credit reports, you can see, okay, here's the things that we're talking about. Like here's the things the lenders want to see. Where do those show up in a credit report? And what does a credit report look like? And we can talk about next actions. Okay, so first off, what is credit? This question, it's your ability to borrow money. This is predominantly when people are talking about credit. It's one of those things that a lot of times people are like, well, it's almost like it's assumed that we all know what credit is. But really what it is your ability to borrow money. It really speaks to how lenders see you when it's coming to like, how are you managing other people? That's what it is that they're looking at with your credit. And so as they see you managing other people's money well, then it increases your credit. It increases your ability to borrow because they see, well, hey, this person is managing money wisely. And if this person is managing money wisely, then we're going to allow that person to borrow more. Okay, so actually it's an interesting thing that you'll hear a lot. It's like, and there's so much truth to it. It's like when I needed money, nobody would give it to me. When I've got plenty of money, then people will just give it to me right and left. And there's a lot of truth to that. It's like if you don't have it, a lot of times it has to do with like at least you can see in people's credit, they don't really know how to manage it real well. And then once you start managing money well, then it's like, oh, everybody and their brother will lend you money, is what it seems like. So it's very easy to get it once you don't need it. And then when you do need it, it's a little bit more difficult to get. Okay. So a couple of things like when people are talking, some phrases that you'll hear pretty frequently is good credit or bad credit. I generally don't like those terms good and bad because they mean so many different things to people. How did you like that pie yesterday? It was good. How'd you like your date? It was good. How'd you like that class? It was good. It's just one of those words that doesn't mean a lot. But when it comes to credit, people say good credit. Really, what they're speaking to is your ability to borrow on favorable terms. Okay. So if I've got good credit, not only do I have the ability to borrow money as I need it, but I can also borrow that money on very favorable terms. That's what we're looking at with good credit. Bad credit, of course, is going to be the inverse of that. You're borrowing on unfavorable terms, or if it's bad enough, you just can't borrow at all. Okay. And that's certainly a case. So high level, what is credit? That's what it is. It's your ability to borrow money. And then good and bad credit really speaks to the terms that you're able to borrow money on. Does that make sense? Questions from either one of you on that one? Okay. So this is an example that I'm just using one here, favorable and unfavorable, but this is kind of the common things that you will see when it comes to managing your credit and what it actually means on a tangible basis. So let's say somebody comes in and they're wanting to spend $30,000 on a vehicle. Okay. Now, if that person has good credit, positive credit, healthy credit, very likely, depending upon the scenario, that person may not have to put any money down. You can go in, you can go to the car loan or car dealership, say, hey, I want to buy this vehicle. And they say, great, let's pull your credit, let's do it. And if everything's good, you really don't have to generally put any money down, unless, of course, you want to. You might have a lower interest rate, or you're going to have a lower interest rate. Now, what going rates are on this, you actually may have a better idea than I do. If you're working in the bank, they may be able to tell you. But generally speaking, you're going to have a lower rate, probably somewhere right around that mark. You also have, when you have better credit, you have the opportunity for longer loan terms as well. Okay, so you can generally go longer. Now, this particular example isn't talking about whether longer or shorter is better for you. Especially with a vehicle, I'm kind of the persuasion if you can go a shorter loan term, it's better. But you have more options is what the point is when you have favorable credit. So this individual, $30,000 vehicle, zero down payment, 3% interest rate, 72-month loan term, has a monthly payment of $455. Whereas in unfavorable terms of borrowing might borrow the same thing, but the lenders may ask for a significant amount of down payment, especially depending on where your credit actually lies. If your credit is depending on where it is, they may ask you for a substantial down payment. So this particular, person that we're making up, hypothetical individual, wants to go buy the $30,000 vehicle, and the bank says, hey, you got to put 6 grand down. Okay. Well, if the person doesn't have a lot of money, that can be difficult as it is. They also are going to have a much higher cost of borrowing. Okay. So you might have it. You've seen these ones happen yet? See you smirking on it. I have seen people with 25% interest rates on their car.
That's crazy.
That is crazy. 25%, man. That's an enormous amount of interest on a car. Okay, so 12% feels good in those instances. But 12% rate, and sometimes those loan terms get cut short too. They may say, well, we want you to have a shorter loan term. Now, again, it just always depends on the situation, but they may say something like that. So this individual, monthly payment 533. Okay. So, besides the obvious, a lot of times when people are thinking about credit, they're really thinking about it more in terms of just their borrowing rate. Oh, if I've got bad credit, I'm going to have a worse interest rate, which is definitely true, but it's not just the rate that it impacts. It also impacts the other factors as well. Again, down payment, interest rate, loan term, et cetera, et cetera. And sometimes too, I didn't put it on here, but also stipulations. Some of your lenders will then put stipulations on a loan, which a stipulation might be you have to prove your income, like you got to bring us pay stubs, or we have to see a mortgage statement and we have to have references. Like literally, we've had that with people before where they'll go get a loan, but they have to have references for the loans. Incidentally, um, it's not so the bank can call your references and say, hey, is Noah Skinner a good guy? That's not why they're calling him, or that's not why they have him. Do you know why they would want to get references from you if you got a poor credit profile? It's actually terribly embarrassing.
Doesn't it have to do with forget the name of them when they sell off the loan to debt collectors for them to go that route.
So that they can call you. Yes, that's right. If they have to sell off the loan or before, they'll generally do it before they sell off the loan. But yeah, they'll keep those references on file and they will call. So like if you give like your buddy from work, or let's say you give a supervisor from work or something, like, oh yeah, yeah, Jim Smith, he's my supervisor, great guy, he'll be a reference for me. I'm a reliable employee, whatever. Then what happens is you don't pay your bill. Guess who gets a phone call? Your boss or whomever you gave. And that's a fun conversation. Okay. So anyway, so credit impact, it's beyond just your cost. It really goes into a lot of these other factors as well, and in your basically your overall loan experience. But then beyond that, really this also begins to affect your monthly cash flow. Okay, so I mean, this person is paying $6,000 up front, which is a difficulty. So somehow you got to come up with that 6,000. And generally, if people got poor credit, they don't have a lot of money in the bank. So then they're borrowing this $6,000 from their friend or their mother or their parents or whatever to borrow the money or to get it. So then they're paying back that loan, plus they're paying out higher payments. So again, all of this boils down to a lot of what credit is it's managing these things to help you want to help your cash flow along, and having positive and healthy credit actually helps keep your cash flow more in line. And of course, from class, we know that your cash flow is a pretty important part of your long-term financial stability. Okay. Questions on this or thoughts? Anything to add? Okay. Yep, definitely seen these, definitely seen worse ones than this, but 25% interest, those ones are exorbitant.
I think it's also important to understand over the 60 months what the interest like amounts to because as each one percentage that it goes up, it's way more than you would think.
Yeah, actually, so let's just we can even do that. Okay, so $533 times 60 months. That means this person will pay a total of $31,980. Now remember, This is only on a $24,000 loan because the person put 6,000 up front. So that means that this person paying a 533 payment paid $8,000, basically a third of the vehicle or third of their loan. They just paid in interest. Okay. Whereas this person over here with a 455 times 72 only paid $2,700 in interest. Yeah. Yeah. So there's a big difference. Okay. And this is also one of the from long-term financial planning standpoint, your cost of borrowing is a large amount of the wealth that you are accumulating over the course of your life. This is something that I've talked about with people, like especially with my son going into college. It's like, look, if you can get out of school without extra student loans, where other people are they're getting out of school and they're paying back loans. So they're paying what happened in the past. If you can get out with manageable student loans, like low amounts, or maybe even nothing at all, if you're fortunate enough for that, then the money that you have, instead of it going to pay past things, you can start putting it towards the future and putting, money to start growing for you. So like this managing interest and managing your credit, it's a pretty significant part, especially when you're younger because a lot of the things that you do when you're younger, you just have to borrow because you don't have a whole lot of money, So you're borrowing more for a house, you're borrowing more for cars, you're borrowing more for whatever it is that you need. So, questions on any of that? Okay. So, how the credit system works? Well, first off, a few things that's helpful to know on terminology of credit system is you got credit history, credit report, you got your credit bureaus, and then you got your credit scores. So, I'm just going to hit all of these. So first off, your credit history, whenever you have a relationship with a lender, okay, whether it's your bank with a credit card, it's your car payment, mortgage payment, or whatever, all of that information related to a loan and related to your interaction with that loan, all of that information is logged. So whether or not you made your payment on time, how much you made your payment for, what your payments are supposed to be, what your loan term is, all of that information is compiled and it's maintained. That's what's all considered to be your credit history, is any of those interactions related with your loans. Now, what happens is that credit history from lender A and lender B and lender C and lender D, all of that information is put on what's called a credit report. And so then what happens is that report aggregates all of that information. And then when you're looking at that report, you're seeing the history of each of those loans. Okay, so you're seeing like loan A is this, loan B is this, loan C is this. All of that information is compiled on the credit report. Okay. Now, as far as common terminology goes, credit history and credit report are generally going to be synonymous with one another. A lot of times, in fact, you even hear it, it's called your credit history report. So if you hear credit history or credit report, they basically mean the same thing. Technically, they're a little different, but they basically mean the same thing. Now, all that information, that credit history is shared with your credit bureaus because otherwise nobody knows what's going on. Lender A doesn't know what lender B is doing. Lender B doesn't know that lender C even exists for you. There's no way that they're otherwise going to know. So all of that information with that's associated with your credit history, all those information from your lenders, it all goes and it's funneled into your credit bureaus. Your credit bureaus are what maintain that information. And your three major credit bureaus are Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. Okay, so these are basically three different companies. They all house the information. The information is reported to those credit bureaus. Okay. Now, one thing about that is that not all lenders report to every credit bureau. So you may have a lender, and let's say you've got loan A, and then loan A maybe, the lender may report that information to Equifax, but not TransUnion, or vice versa. So you will definitely find instances where a credit bureau does not house all of the information. They don't have all of the information. So a lot of times when lenders are looking at a loan with you, depending upon what the loan is and what the situation is, they may pull all three credit bureaus to see your credit from different perspectives and different angles. Okay. Like even on mine, if I pull up mine here, you'll see there are some things reported on like Experian that aren't on TransUnion and vice versa. So that's something interesting to know about that. Any questions on that? Nope. Okay. So the next thing is your credit score. All that information from the credit bureau, that information is then compiled to give you your score. So there's basically two types of scores, or there's two main scoring platforms. One is FICO. So you often hear about your FICO score. The other popular one is your Vantage score. So your FICO score is kind of like your name brand score. It's like the one that everybody knows. Unfortunately, not everybody has access to the FICO score. So what there is a lot more common access is your Vantage score. And your Vantage score is basically a score as well. It's just got a little bit different of a scoring model, but it is definitely gaining in popularity. And in fact, it's basically what I use, at least for mine. Or if I'm looking at clients, I'm always looking at their Vantage score more than anything, just because it's easier to find. But I've also heard here recently in the news that they're actually thinking about using the Vantage score for mortgages and stuff. So it's now becoming a lot more commonplace. But the idea is the score is built off of the information that's housed within your credit bureaus. Okay. Okay, so the credit process then, knowing that information, the credit process basically works a little bit like this. Okay, so let's say you're sitting around, you've got an idea, okay, you want to buy a car or you want to, whatever it is that you want to do. So you go to the bank and you sit down with Mr. Connor Gaffney, and he's your relationship banker, and you tell Mr. Gaffney and you say, Mr. Gaffney, I would like to buy a car. And he's like 25% interest, it's all yours. And you say, no, 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 I'd like to do a little better than that. You'd say, I'd actually like to see if I could get a loan for this car. So Mr. Gaffney here, he looks at you and he says, okay, well, what I'm going to have you do here is I'm going to have you sign this credit application. Now, on this credit application, this is basically where you're going to put your name and your social security number, your employer, and different information like that. But you actually have to have that information signed, and you have to give that information. You got to give your explicit consent. And once they have that, then what they do is they ship that off to the credit bureaus. Okay, they'll have some sort of access to the credit bureaus. Obviously, usually these days it's a digital access. So they'll put that information into the computer. They'll pull your credit report from your credit bureau, or they will request it. And so what happens is the credit bureau sends you their credit report. So Mr. Skinner is sitting here. He's got this idea to buy a car. He comes to Mr. Gaffney, signs out this credit application. They send it to the credit bureau. Credit bureau sends out back that credit report. Mr. Gaffney then begins to review that credit report. And he's like, well, either one of two things is going to happen. Either you got good credit, or you got bad credit. One of the two. Those are your only two options. Either it's going to work or it's not going to work. If it works, you get the money. If it doesn't work, you don't get the money. No bueno. No good stuff. Okay. So this is generally speaking high level. This is how that credit process works. You go to the bank or you talk to a bank, you do a credit application, they send that to the bureau, they send you back the report, and then the bank decides whether they're going to give you the money or not going to give you the money. Okay. Now, do you think that's the only thing your loans are based upon? It's just your credit? What else do you got? What else do you think they're based on? Let's say you
I
want,
think it depends on the type of loan, but your assets could play.
yeah, assets could play. Let's do a simple one that's not going to involve our assets, just to keep things simple. Let's say you want to go buy $30,000 for a loan. That's supposed to be a K. It's not an anarchy symbol, that's a K. Okay, so You got $30,000 loan you want to borrow. Well, one thing that's going to be really important on that lending process is they're going to want to know the value of the vehicle. So for instance, let's say you wanted to borrow $30,000 on a vehicle that was only worth $20,000. Bank's not going to look very favorably upon that. They're going to say, well, you're borrowing $10,000 more than the vehicle is worth. So that's not going to be too positive. But let's say you got something like this. Let's say you want to borrow $30,000 on a vehicle that's worth $27,000. Okay. Now, first off, what kind of instance would require somebody to borrow more than the asset is worth? Can you think of anything?
Used car that requires repair.
Used car? Yep. Gaffney, were you going to say something?
Yeah. Title and taxes.
Yes, title and taxes. Okay, so in West Virginia, where I think the taxes on a vehicle are like 6%. So if I went to, let's say I went to borrow or buy a vehicle that was $27,000 and I've got 6% tax just on that, I'm going to have $1,620 just in taxes, not to mention my, you know, other costs, titling and all that. So this idea of people borrowing more than what a vehicle is worth, this is pretty common. Okay. So what you're looking at with this, again, we're kind of coming back to this idea. What are the things people look at? Do they only look at your credit? Well, no. That is one factor of lending, is certainly going to be your credit, and that's a very large portion of it. But like in an instance like this, what they're also going to do is they're going to say, well, if you want to borrow more than the vehicle's worth, that's okay per se, in a manner of speaking. But the more that you have, or the more that the loan is relative to what the vehicle is worth, the higher they're going to want to see your credit. Okay, so the stronger they're going to want to see your credit. Whereas if you have weaker credit and you're trying to borrow more than what it's worth, that's going to be a lot more difficult to do simply by virtue of the fact that your credit, what they say in the business is your credit doesn't support borrowing more than what it's worth. Okay. So these types of options are available to you, but it's also going to depend upon the strength of your credit. Okay. Make sense? So credit, that's just one of the factors that they do is they're going to look at your credit, but it is a pretty significant portion of it. Okay. So a couple questions here. What happens if your information was stolen? Okay, so let's just say that somebody stole. So here you are there, but let's just say it's not Skinner with this great idea here. Let's say it's John P. Scammer that's got a great idea. And John P. Scammer comes to Mr. Gaffney and says, hey, I've got this credit information. I'd like to see if I get a loan. Mr. Gaffney doesn't know any better. So he starts to run the credit. So what happens in those types of instances? Okay. First off, one of the ways which you're going to always check this stuff is this is one of the reasons it's very important you always check your credit report. Okay, you want to check your credit report regularly. I don't know if you two boys are doing this, but you do want to check your credit on a regular basis. Okay. It's too easy for this to happen. I've seen this happen too many times. There's just too much fraud that goes along, especially every day when it seems like you open up your mail and it's like, hey, we are very sorry to let you know that your information was sold in a data leak or stolen in a data leak. Like, oh, okay, thank you. So you want to check your credit regular to make sure that that doesn't happen. If it does happen, okay, you want to freeze your credit. That's what it's called. It's called freezing your credit. And really what you do with that, you call up the credit bureaus or you go to their website. And actually, if you hang tight for 1 second, may have. Yeah, okay. So like you can go to these websites and like the Equifax or TransUnion. Let me see if I can pull this up. Okay. So like here, I just pulled this one up just for reference. You go to transunion.com/credit dash freeze. And then what you do is you just go in and you just add a freeze to your credit. Okay, so you're going to put in your name, your information, all of that, mobile, date of birth, whatever, social security number. And then, of course, whether or not you want helpful news and tips about this service to be sent to you, because everybody's got to add you to their email list. But anyway, you put that information in there. You're going to have to verify your identity, which you're just going to have to do when it comes to any of that credit verification. They will verify your credit. But then what happens is your credit is frozen. So if you go to the bank and you go to try to pull that credit, they do it, then what's going to happen is they're just going to get like a credit is frozen alert. Okay, so they can't see anything. It's not just that they're making they won't make a decision. They can't make a decision because what the credit bureau is going to return to them is a invalid credit is frozen. Okay, so that happens. Some people keep their credit frozen all of the time, and then they just go reopen it before they want credit. That is certainly a smart thing to do, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's not, some people definitely do that. Okay. So if your credit was stolen, that's what you want to do. You want to go in and you want to freeze your credit with each of those bureaus, with each of the three bureaus. So Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. You want to freeze your credit with all three of those bureaus. And then if anything does show up on your credit, you want to dispute that. Okay. Now I'm going to show you. So this is a sample credit report. And what you can find when you're looking at a credit report, most of your loans will have a creditor contact on here. Okay. They'll always have like a creditor contact. That way, if there is anything that shows up on your credit that you don't know how to handle or you don't know what it is or it's a little suspect to you, you can call them and hopefully they're easy to get a hold of and they'll talk to you and you can just contact them. But on your credit report, you're going to see that not necessarily for all of them, but you are going to see it for most of your lenders. They will have a creditor contact where you can dispute things. Some of your systems will even have they'll even have, depending on where you're getting your credit report, they might even have a place on there where you can dispute the credit right there. Okay. Okay. So if your information was stolen, those are the steps that you're going to always want to take. You want to verify in your credit report. You want to see exactly what the damage is and what is going on with it. You want to freeze your credit immediately, and then you want to dispute anything that is on your credit that shouldn't be on your credit. Okay. Questions on any of that? Okay. So your factors, these are the things that your credit lenders are looking for when it comes to your credit. Like what actually gives you positive credit? What is it that makes you have a healthy credit? These are the things that you want to make sure of. On-time payments. This is the one that most people that we most closely associate with good credit is I've always paid my bills on time. If I've always paid my bills on time, that's where people think like that's what credit is. And that is a huge portion of credit is paying your bills on time, but that is not all of credit. It's going to be the most significant factor on your credit, but it's not the only factor. The other one is your credit card utilization rate. Now, that one is probably the quickest one, assuming that you're making all of your payments on time, which is, a lot of people are going to make their payments on time, but this credit card utilization rate is one that trips people up pretty regularly. This one is the balance owed. This is how much you actually owe on your card. We'll say balance owed divided by, what's it divided by? I know you guys know this one.
Your credit limit.
Credit limit, that's right. Okay, this is the amount that you can borrow. Okay, so if I've got a $3,000 card, or if I've got $3,000 as my credit limit, and I have borrowed $2,000, then my credit card utilization rate is going to be that $2,000 that I owe divided by the $3,000. Yeah, let's see if my calculator's working. But it's going to be divided by that. It's going to be divided by what the total amount that I'm able to borrow my credit limit. So like that instance, somebody would have a 67% utilization rate. Now your utilization rate is is probably your most common thing that's going to depress people's credit scores is just simply having a high utilization rate. So if you're ever in a position where you're trying to fix your credit or fix somebody else's credit, beyond the obvious of are they making their payments on time, um, checking their credit card utilization rate's a pretty quick way to have a way to focus to build somebody's credit up. Incidentally, do you remember the rate that you want to have it under for your credit card?
30%.
30%. Nice work. Nice work. Okay. So you want to keep that under 30%. Now, what that 30% means also, that doesn't just mean that, like, let's say you've got $1,000 card. It doesn't mean that you have under 30% by the time when you're paying it off. So like if you go in there, let's say you put a television on your credit card and that television is $800. Okay. That your utilization rate is going to be 80% on that. Okay, it's going to show as a high balance on there. I want to show you another credit card show you how this works. Okay, so here's another client on here. Now, this client, so this is a few years old, this report, but it's the same thing. So like you can see on here, this person's credit limit of $6,300 and high balance is 3,126. So when you're looking at those credit reports and lenders are looking at your credit, they're looking at your credit history, they're always going to see what your high balance is. Okay. So like if you, let's say you put $800 on and you bought that TV and you went and paid it off the next day, the lender is still going to have the ability to see what your high balance is. Okay. And two, something else that's important with how that works is let's say this is your month, the timeline of your month. So let's just say it's the 1st and then we've got to the 31st. So this is the timeline of the month. You really don't know what day that your lenders report to the credit bureau because they could report it at different days all the time. So they may take that data, whatever the data is on the 22nd, and they may report that to the credit bureau on the 22nd. So if you went and bought that $800 TV on the 22nd, and let's say on the 24th you paid it off, well, if they report on the 23rd, then they're going to see that $800 and that's going to be your utilization rate because that's when it reported to the credit bureau. Does that make sense?
I got a quick question about that.
Yeah, go for it.
So is that just gonna be there like for the month? So if another month passes, is it back to whatever the next month's highest is?
Yeah, good question. So your utilization rate will go down month by month based upon when they report. So your utilization rate will update every month based upon what's reported to the credit bureau. However, this high balance, this does not go away. This is like it's kind of like your high score on something, so it's just like it keeps the record of your high score. It keeps the record of your high balance. That's always going to show to a lender is your high balance. So like when a lender is looking at your credit report, they're going to look at something that's somewhat like this. They're going to see credit limit, high balance, current balance. So like this person's current balance is $0, but their high score, if you will, is 3126. Capiche?
Yeah.
Other questions on this? Okay. So factors of credit worthiness, on-time payments being most significant, credit card utilization rate being the next, keep that under 30%. Derogatory remarks, this is negative things that impact your credit. This is like if you got a bankruptcy, let's say you've got a credit card that you didn't repay, and so it went to collections. All of that stuff is going to show up in your derogatory remarks. Derogatory remarks hit your credit for 7 years, and 10 years in some instances, okay, like a bankruptcy. So 7 years that sits on your credit. 7 years, that's a negative impact to your credit. 7 years is a long time to negatively impact your credit. Okay, so any of those derogatory remarks that you get if you don't pay a bill and it gets charged off, that will sit on your credit for 7 years. Okay. Don't do that. The other things that are factors of your credit, what's that?
No, it's just I don't think anybody plans on the whole bankruptcy thing.
No, no, that's not true. That's not true. Some people definitely have planned that one out. They they go charge up a bunch of stuff. They're just going to do bankruptcy. It doesn't matter. I have had some calls. So if I am planning bankruptcy, no, we're not planning bankruptcy. But anyway, now I've had something. This is neither here nor there, but it's always fun stories. Sometimes people like they see bankruptcy as like it's almost an inevitability. Like there's no way I can get out of this situation, so I'm going to go through bankruptcy. Okay. But before I go into bankruptcy, I need to make sure I have a car and I need to make sure that this is taken care of so that when I go into bankruptcy, because I know my credit's going to be shot. So some people actually do plan out their bankruptcies to be able to get cars and get stuff, and then they try to have it wiped away as much as possible. But at least that way they got a reliable car. So yeah, most of the time it's unplanned, but not always. Okay. Other things that matter, the number of accounts you have, the average age of your credit lines matter. So like this is one of those things, if you have a credit card that you've had for 10 years, and then you go open up another credit card and let's say it's you've had it for 1 month, okay, and let's say those are the only two credit lines you have, then basically what they're going to do is they're just going to take an average of your credit, and so this person would have an average credit of 5 years. Okay, and like, but I've had credit for 10 years. Yes, you have, but it's not saying how long have you had credit. It's saying what's the average age of your credit. Okay. So just keep that in mind that when you go, you're applying for more credit. Sometimes people will say that, like, hey, I applied for more credit, my credit went down. Why is that? Well, that could be the reason why. Okay. And then your last factor is your number of credit inquiries. This is like this is the number of times people are reviewing your credit. Okay, like lenders are reviewing your credit. So this is that idea of a hard pull. Okay, hard pull versus soft pull. Soft pull is you checking your credit. Hard pull is somebody else checking your credit. Okay, so the lenders do keep track of the number of credit pulls, and because this kind of speaks to like if you're always begging for money, like you're going all the time asking for money, then that looks a little suspect to lenders. Okay. So credit inquiries, they actually stay on your credit for 2 years. Something important to know. So they do fall off after 2 years. So you just kind of want to manage your credit inquiries accordingly. So you've got your more significant factors, which are the top three, less significant factors are your bottom three. But these are the things, largely speaking, that your lenders are looking for when they are determining your credit. Okay. Questions, comments, concerns on this?
I got a quick question. Oh,
Yeah.
you can go first, Noah.
Okay. Um, for the average age of credit,
Mhm.
if I'm an authorized user on a credit card, does that count towards mine? And if I get off as an authorized user, does that just wipe away that age?
I don't know if it wipes it away. I don't know the answer to that question. Does it impact your I don't think it wipes it away, is it would have showed as an open account that you had for a certain period of time. Does it diminish the amount of credit that you have or what your average credit age? I'm gonna guess that the answer to that is yes.
Okay.
When you do become an authorized user, yes, it does. It does piggyback on, say, your parents, for instance, and you will have their length of credit showing up sometimes on yours too. So it's actually an interesting thing to look at on yours to see what it will tell you on it. But yeah, I've had people I did have a girl that worked for me at one point. Her parents made her an authorized user, and then when she was pulling her credit, it was like her credit history was like 30 years, and she wasn't even 30 years old. She was like mid 20s or something. So it was kind of crazy. So that's the best I have on that answer to that question. Daphne, you had one?
Yeah, as far as the number, so when you're going to, let's say, um, I guess it will work for mortgages too. Like if you're going around and you're checking different lenders and you want to get like a competitive rate,
Mhm.
because like as far as going to buy a car, you can go car dealership and then you can go to like a like the nonprofits, the credit unions, and then a bank. So like
Mhm.
if you go to all three of them, you're gonna get three polls, right?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually it gets worse with that in like the car business. So what it's known as your credit being what's called shotgunned. It's a GUN. So what happens is let's say you go to a car dealership, and if your credit, especially if your credit's marginal, okay, um, what happens is they want to get you the best rate so they can sell you the vehicle. What they care about is they want to get you the best rate. They want to sell you the vehicle. So they're going to send your credit to, they might send it to four different banks. So not only will they pull it themselves, but they might send you to four banks. Well, then that's five inquiries right there because it's you plus four other bank or dealership plus four banks. Well, then what happens if you go to another dealership because you're shopping? Like, well, I went to the Subaru first, but maybe I want a Honda, or maybe I want a Toyota. Then you go to the Toyota and they send your credit to four or five. So like you will see some people will come out of car shopping with like 10 or 15 inquiries. Yeah, it can be crazy. So it's not the most significant factor. I'm not going to act like, if you go do that, all of a sudden you're going to see your credit just tank. You're not going to see it tank because it's not the most weighted one, but it does impact you and it does go to kind of your management of your credit inquiries. So yeah, you do want to be careful with that. You want to be very careful with your credit inquiries. So interestingly, if you're going to buy a car, what I would always recommend people do is get an idea of what the rate is through your bank. Just go to your local bank and just say what are auto rates, and they may say, right now for well qualified buyers it's 5%. Okay, then what I would do is I would go to the dealership and say, hey, my bank is going to offer me 5%. Now, maybe the bank offers you the 5%, or maybe they're just telling you that's rate, but at least that puts you in a ball game where they will say, well, I think we can get that. And if we can get it less than five, would you do the deal with us? Yeah, sure. If you get less than what my bank will give you, I don't care. So that can help limit getting that shotgun. Good question. Other question on that. Okay. Well, these are the things that predominantly your banks are looking for. Okay. So I'm going to leave you a couple of things on just building credit so that you all know, or that it's going to at least be on the recording too. I'm going to do that, and then we'll close up here. But a couple things on originating credit, and really this is helpful for either yourself or if you're helping people on this, because certainly both of you will come across this in your travels. But we've talked about that authorized user. That is basic low hanging fruit. That is your easiest thing to do with someone if they need to build credit and they don't have credit and they have responsible partner or parents or someone. Authorized user. Strong emphasis on responsible. This can really have you seen it happen?
Yeah, I was gonna ask a question. No, I was gonna ask a question like, can they also tank your credit before you even like?
Yes, they
Because
can.
I think what's the youngest age you could be to be an authorized user?
18.
Is it
Well, you
it
can
is
be an
18?
authorized user at any time. It just won't report to the credit bureau until you're 18.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
The lender won't ask for your social security card, or at least or your social security number. At least they're not supposed to before you're 18. Now, we've had it happen. When I say we, in my former travels at the university, seen it happen where parents, actually it wasn't me, it was one of my comrades there at the university. She told me that she has had it happen where, they'll check the kid's credit with them or something, a student's credit, and the parents opened up credit cards in the kid's name and and kind of ran up credit card bills. So yeah, that kind of stuff happens too. Ugh. So authorized user, easy, low-hanging fruit, emphasis on making sure that it's a responsible person that you're tagging it on. And it's also important to know too that, like, let's say you've got a credit card with a $10,000 limit. Okay. If I were to make, let's say, I make Noah here an authorized user. So Noah now is an authorized user on my account. Noah has complete access to this $10,000. Okay. Unless the credit card has a way to limit spending on that card, which some of them do. Like, so for my son's, he's an authorized user on mine. I think he's got like a $200 limit or something I signed. But if the credit card company doesn't have that, it is just important to know that that person does have complete access to whatever your credit limit is. They can go run it up just like you run it up, they can run it up unless you have a way to throttle that. Okay. But then again, the main account holder is not authorized to give you the card. So if I wanted just to build Noah's credit up, I could make him an authorized user and never give him a credit card. Okay. Utility bills. If your name is on utility bills, this does not report to the credit bureau on its own, but there are loans like house loans. If you go to try to get a house loan and you don't have other credit, you can have them check your utility bills, and then they go back and they will check it, and it's called non-conventional credit, and they can use that. But again, that does not report to your credit bureau on its own. This is basically if you're going to get a loan, like a house loan, something that's a little more involved, they can do that. So you can help build credit that way. Secured credit cards versus unsecured credit cards. Mr. Gaffney, I know you know about this one. But for purposes of what we're talking about here, actually, I really liked how you put that last week. Unsecured credit cards they're basically like debit cards. You just put the money in at first, and then you're able to spend that down, and you replenish it at the end of the month. And that's how you can start if somebody has no credit and they can't get a secured credit card, that's where I would start them, as an unsecured credit card. Maybe even send them to you to open one up for them, since you've got the most experience out of any of us here opening up unsecured credit cards. And then credit cards versus store credit cards. Okay, these ones are not as popular anymore. A lot of your stores, like, it used to be like you'd have a Kohl's card and it was only good at Kohl's. Now, like, your Kohl's card, it's a Kohl's Visa card and it's also good otherwhere, and you can build points for Kohl's or something. But in the absence of something like that, if it's a card that's only good for one place, they do not build your credit as much as a normal credit card does. So if you're doing it, it's better to have a normal credit card than it is a store credit card. Okay. Those are nice to build up points, but they don't build up your credit as quickly as a normal credit card does.
Also, with those store credit cards, I found that they are easier to get, but they also don't build up as much as you say.
Yeah, that's a good point. They are a little easier to get because they like you doing them. It's like 30 some percent interest and you're buying their clothes or whatever it is. Okay, then the other thing I tell people with originating credit, build cash, save money. Okay, build cash, save money. I mean, we talked about this in the workshop last time. I mean, saving money solves a world of ills when it comes to financial planning. But in credit, it's the same thing. Like, if we go back to that original example of the person buying the $30,000 car, they might not have been able to get that car loan unless they had that $6,000 cash. So if you're trying to build credit or advise somebody on building credit until they have credit, help them to build cash, because that cash can help stand in proxy. That cash is how you get an unsecured credit card, because you got to have cash. that can help you get larger loans if you have cash. Lenders will take a chance on you if you can come to the table with a little bit of cash. All right, questions on that? Okay. Okay, credit summary here. As you manage these factors, your credit's going to increase. As they're managed well, your credit's going to increase. It does take time. All of this takes time. If you can build this stuff over time, that'd be the quickest. That would be one of the things I would also always recommend to people too, is don't try to game the credit card game. From a game standpoint, there's a lot of people that do that, and you can. I'm not going to say you can't have success by gaming it, meaning like go get this credit card, then ask for this limit, then try to put this on it, and then go get another credit card and do this. There's a lot of things you can do to game your credit. But from a financial planning standpoint, it's just slow and steady wins the race. As long as you can have a few things that you do, you manage a few accounts on the regular, you're paying them well, you're keeping your credit card utilization rate, your credit will grow and it will increase over time without all the work of trying to game things. That gaming stuff, there's nothing wrong with it, but you have to be in it. It's like day trading. Like if you're just telling me like you want to invest for the long term, don't go day trade. Day trading, it's too much. You got to be in it all the time. You got to pay attention to it. And that's just not what most people want to do. They want to set investments and then forget them. Same thing with credit. You can day trade credit and go game it and try to play credit card games to increase your credit score. But you got to be in it and you got to be paying attention. Most people don't want that. Just manage it over time. Building credit, it's not an end unto itself. It's a tool in your financial planning toolbox, meaning that who cares about your score? It's not like if you have an 800 score, you're something better than somebody that's got a 780 score. Okay. My score, I think my Vantage score is like 780. I think I've got a FICO score that says it's 800. It doesn't matter. I don't sit there and like, oh my gosh, it's got to say this. It doesn't matter. You just want to have healthy credit. That's what you're looking for, is you want to have healthy credit. And if you have healthy credit, it's going to be a very sharp tool in your financial planning toolbox. Okay, it can improve cash flow and it improves your access to capital. Both things are important for long-term financial planning. Okay. Okay. So there's one other thing I wanted to share with you on credit. Oh, this is an important one to know too. If you ever get yourself into financial trouble, okay, and let's just say your credit is getting wrecked. Okay, maybe you lose your job. People go through periods of time. One trick that you can do to help yourself out is like, for instance, there are certain things that you always need. You always are going to need a vehicle. Well, if you can't get a loan for a vehicle, that's very hard. Lenders tend to be very loyal, meaning that they don't care if you have um, if you have not paid every other lender in history, but you've always paid that particular lender, they're going to be pretty favorable to give you money because it's like, look, he may have stiffed everybody else, but he's never stiffed me. And so it's a lot more likely that they can get you loans. So I've seen that happen a lot. It was really weird. Like when I used to do some credit underwriting, like you would see people all the time. They would stiff everybody and their brother, but by golly, they never let their Ford payment go. They always made their Ford payment. And you know what? When they needed to get a car, didn't matter that they had crappy credit. Ford would be like, they've never not paid me. I'm good with that. We'll give them a loan. Okay. So you can always find yourself, if you're in that position, if you can always find like a car payment, you can always make your car payment on time. Things like that go to help you in negative situations as well. So that's always kind of an interesting little credit tidbit to know, that just in practice, it's like they're very loyal. If you're loyal to them, lenders will be a little more loyal to you come loan time, even if your credit isn't so pretty. Okay. Questions, comments, concerns? All right. So next actions. We're closing up here. So the lecture is recorded, and this will be posted to YouTube and LinkedIn. So you will find it there on LinkedIn. So if you missed this, you can find it. So if anybody's watching this and they want to know, it's there. Also, we'll put the link in the follow-up email. So you'll generally get a couple follow-up emails after one of these. There is also a recorded lecture that's going to be, that is, the recorded lecture it's basically this material, only it's a little more technical, it's a little more laid out. It's about an hour and a half long. So there is one of those that is there. It's available for purchase. It's $10. So the live session here, this is available for free. If you want a little more in-depth one, then that's going to be available also. And oops. And then workshop 3 will be next week, or excuse me, not next week, 'cause next week is Thanksgiving. It'll be the week after that, and we are planning on doing a little more in-depth dive on some aspects of credit. So building credit from different scenarios. What about collections? How do you deal with collections? Let's say you're advising or you're looking at, different scenarios in credit. What are we looking at? So that's what we plan to talk about in the next one. So basically from here, next actions, this one's recorded and it'll be posted. There's a recorded one for sale that's about an hour and a half long. It's a little more deeper of a dive. And then we're going to have a expansion on that in a couple of weeks. So any questions before I close up the recording? Any questions or comments or anything that you want to add here? Okay. Well, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just close up this recording and bid you adieu. And thanks everybody for watching. And